All right. Next one comes in from Dulcimeris. Dulcimeris actually left a pile of comments this week. So
So
thanks for
thank you,
that.
Dolce.
Yeah, helps the algorithm out. Um, Love it. Anyways, big takeaways from all their comments here. The Blue Jays don't, quote, need to trade a catcher. Dulcimer says the Jays' willingness to play Moreno at second, third, and left field demonstrates they'll find a way to get his bat in the lineup, even if they end up carrying all three catchers. Moreno's defensive versatility makes it possible for the Jays to keep all three. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, Scott, but I want to push back a little bit on the premise here. uh, I know that he did have some gimmick roles towards the end of the season there. Was playing in, I think, second base and left field in the last game of the season and whatever, right?
Mhm.
That whole game had a parents versus kids exhibition feel to it. So I
Mhm.
don't want to read too much into that there. I know he did play at like third base and some outfield in AAA. Um, I'm still skeptical that that's a legitimate plan forward for the Blue Jays. I think they definitely rather develop him as a catcher. So, over under Gabriel Moreno, games started anywhere but catcher slash DH. I'm setting it at 10.5. Are you taking the over or the under?
I take the under.
Me too.
I think he very well could play 8 to 10 games around the diamond. I think um, it is very possible that maybe he plays DH for half the game. And then if they're up by some runs, maybe they stick him into second as they massage the defense.
Agreed.
But no, I don't think he's going to get a pile of starts anywhere but catcher. I think his arm strength and just what a premium position catcher is. I don't think that there's a he already has that versatility. There's already value in that. I don't think pushing him to play 20 games at third base is going to do anything for him as a player, and I don't think it's going to do anything for this organization. Now, this could be different in a different organization, by the way. Like maybe if Moreno does get traded to, let's say, I don't know, the Brewers, and their DH spot is gummed up a little more, maybe they do play him a little bit at second base or left field or whatever. But for the Jays, you just look at this roster. I just don't see how playing Moreno all over the field is going to do anything for this team.
No, especially if they are going to try and develop him as a catcher. The number one skill he needs to work on isn't his pop time. It isn't his hitting. It's his calling a game. And you don't
Yes.
practice calling a game while you're standing in left field. So for that reason, I agree with you. I'm out on that. It's definitely the under for me. Let us know in the comments though. Gabriel Moreno, game started anywhere but catcher and DH, 10.5. You taking the over or the under? Um, Next part from Dulcimerist, talking about the Teoscar Hernandez trade. Says the main thing I don't like about the trade is that a deal for a replacement wasn't in place already. Now that the Jays have a great need to replace the Teoscar vacancy, the free agents available and trade partners now have the leverage when Jays try to negotiate deals. The rest of the deal I can live with because teams trade contracts, not players, and the Jays made a good trade of contracts.
To
I got,
start with, I just want to jump in here, Adam, real quick, and
please.
just to start with, Dulcimer truly is an excellent baseball mind. He has been a member of this walk-off community for over 2 years, so he has seen us at our worst. Uh, and
Yes.
he always has some really well thought out, really intelligent baseball knowledge and comments to drop. I disagree on this a little bit. I don't know where you're at, Adam. I feel like so let's just start with George Springer and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. are our everyday outfielders. Biggio can play the outfield. Merrifield can play the outfield. Merrifield is going to be a linchpin in this Blue Jays lineup. I think it's going to surprise Jays fans how much time he plays. He's going to be the everyday second baseman. He's going to get time in center field. I mean, even Dolce mentioned Gabriel Moreno can play left field.
Right.
I don't think it actually inhibits this Blue Jays team with leverage. And I could be wrong. Who knows? Maybe teams are squeezing them extra hard now. I just think that if a team has an area of need and they want to deal with the Blue Jays, where the Blue Jays area of need is irrelevant to them as long as the pieces match.
Yeah, that's where I am
Where,
too, Scott.
yeah.
I disagree with this comment about leverage, painting ourselves into a corner wholeheartedly for basically the same reason. Um, like unless it is a big multi-trade, like you just don't see a lot of trades that one trade solves all your problems. Like it is always a multi-piece trade for any team, right? If it was the other case, if we had signed a free agent and hadn't gotten rid of Teoscar yet, now you just say the opposite, or like the same thing on the opposite side, right? Of, well, now we've lost all of our leverage getting rid of Teoscar because the other team knows that we have to, right? We have too many outfielders, so we've lost all of our leverage in trading one, right? So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a damned if you do, damned if you don't, if that's your opinion. And I tend to agree with you, what you were saying about when it does come to other teams looking to fill their vacancies and whatever. I don't think a free agent is going to try and extort the Blue. I don't think Brandon Nemo, if he's talking with the Blue Jays, and he's going to be offered 6 years, $150 million, looks and goes, well, I see that you guys don't have Teoscar Hernandez anymore, so you guys are screwed. You need me. I need a
Mm-hmm.
seventh year. Like, I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's. If he's coming to Toronto anyways, we're already overpaying him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
I do. I think
we're
that's a
already
good
giving
point.
him the extra year. Like, so that's just where I'm kind of like, whether it's Cody Bellinger or Brandon Nemo or whoever it is, anybody that we're in talk with, we're already their leverage doesn't come from us not having three outfielders. Their leverage comes from the supply and demand of outfielders. And like we just talked about earlier, the fact that the leverage comes from the Dodgers need an outfielder, the fact that the Giants need an outfielder, the fact
Mm-hmm.
that the Yankees, the Mets, the list goes on and on, need an outfielder, and there isn't that many good outfielders available. That's where the leverage comes from, regardless of whether we still had Teoscar or not. So,
I would agree. And again, we're not in the front office. We have no sources. Maybe this is a legit problem, and maybe the Jays did screw themselves over by trading Teoscar too early. But I feel like this front office is savvy enough and experienced enough in the front office in general. I mean, Shapiro built the Guardians for 10 years before moving on to Toronto. I don't see this as something that they would handcuff themselves with. But who knows? Again, I'm not in these negotiations.
well,
Maybe they did screw themselves
and
over.
another factor, I mean, we've talked about this before, is just like the freeing up of money, right? Like they could have just been handcuffed by Rogers. We're like, no, this is your budget. If you want to go out and sign a free agent, you got to cut salary elsewhere. Like it could have just been that simple,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where like they didn't have a choice. If they want to go out and get another pitcher, they just had to cut salary, period. So who knows? It's a
And maybe
game
it's
for
like
mightier
it's
minds than
it's
ours.
maybe it's like what Craig Ballard mentioned on the show yesterday, where it's not so much that they're handcuffed with money and had to offload that $14 million Teoscar was going to make in this final year of his contract. Maybe it had to do that they've been given their budget. They're taking a look and they're like, you know what? We move a few more dollars off the books and we can go big game hunting. We
Hmm.
can go out there and actually try and get a Dansby Swanson or a Xander Bogarts or a Trey Turner. We can actually make a bid for Aaron
Well,
Judge, even though
and
we won't
plus,
get him.
plus
We can at
the
least
other.
push the.
Sorry, I cutting you off there, Scott.
No, I'm just saying, push the
I,
price of Judge up. Go ahead though.
no, just to agree with you though is that that other side of the coin is also having a vacancy. Maybe isn't a leverage weakness. Maybe it's a leverage strength where now we can go to Brandon Nemo and be like, hey, you get to be our, like it's
Mm-hmm.
sign with us. We have a spot for you, not a
We
sign with
promise we'll
us, and
make a
then
spot.
yeah, we'll
Yes.
we'll figure something out, right? It's like a boy who dates a second girl before he dumps his girlfriend, right? It's like, well, that's kind of sleazy. Like, just dump her and then we'll talk, like.
Yeah.
So, anyways, we've talked ourselves into circles here. I just want to touch on one more thing before we move on. Totally. This kind of relates on the topic of trading contracts rather than trading players.
Mhm.
We did do a video last week about a trade for Corbin Burns that maybe would include Christian Yelich uh, in a way to bring Corbin Burns' value down, as opposed to us adding more to a trade to match the Corbin Burns value. So Brewers fans came out strong to light us up for how dumb our trade was. Basically, the trade was this: Alejandro Kirk, interchangeable with Moreno or Jansen or whatever. It is what it is. A Blue Jays catcher for Corbin Burns and Christian Yelich was the general broad strokes
And we
of the
never
trade.
mentioned Danny Jansen, by the way. I know Jansen's probably not in that category. It would be
Probably
Moreno or
not.
Kirk, but
Correct.
yes.
But first, I just wanted to clarify that anytime we do discuss a potential trade, we are only ever going to discuss the big pieces when we're speculating, right? Because nothing puts me or anyone else to sleep faster than listening to the balancing details of a double A guy on this team versus a single A guy on that team versus like snooze fest. So,
Mhm.
of course, there is an implication that if it is Kirk for Burns and Yelich, sure, there is going to be a minor
Some
league arm
sweeteners.
or whatever
Yes.
on one side or the other, or multiple pieces on both sides to make both teams feel like it's a fair and balanced trade, etc. So I just wanted to get that off the table. We're not just saying Kirk for Burns and Yelich straight across. Of course, there's going to be some seasoning sprinkled in there. Second of
Also,
all,
this isn't that crazy of a trade. Go ahead. Sorry,
no,
man.
this is what the second of all is that I just wanted to point out, because they're coming after us like, oh, this isn't a video game. You guys are so dumb. That's so unbalanced. Like, Yelich is so good and Burns is elite and all this stuff for one player. Okay, so we didn't invent the idea of a salary dump trade. Is the point that I want to like we're not just like outsmarting baseball here. Like, we're not pretending to be smarter than we are. We're looking at historic things that have happened and we're looking for patterns. That's all we're doing, right? So
Yeah.
the obvious
The perfect
comparison
comparable.
here for me, and I know you agree with me on, is let me just pull it up here. Ever heard of Mookie Betts?
Right.
Right. So Mookie Betts, superstar with the Boston Red Sox, traded to the Dodgers for Alex Verdugo and a couple of prospects. On top of Mookie Betts, the Red Sox also added superstar pitcher David Price with a massive contract. The Red
Mhm.
Sox also paid for half of that contract. So it was a three-way trade. The Twins were involved as well. But
With, like you said, the pieces on top, right?
it's
Like there
this
were
the seasoning to balance things out and whatever, right? But basically, the Dodgers got Mookie Betts and David Price and a bunch of cash to pay for Price's contract. The Red Sox got Alex Verdugo, Jeter Downs, and Connor Wong. So Jeter Downs and Connor Wong have each played like 30 to 40 games in the MLB. So those are the minor leaguers that we're not going to speculate on whether it's Adam Kloffenstein or Zach
yeah.
Britton or whoever. It is what it is, right? Alex Verdugo, catcher, he is the Alejandro Kirk comparable.
Mhm.
Mookie Betts, the superstar, is the Corbin Burns comparable. And David Price, with the bloated, I think it was 7 years, $217 million contract, is the Christian Yelich comparable, who was great, has not lived up to the price of the contract. So,
That is the thing, and listen, it's so funny too because we've done 2 videos on this, and one video, it was Brewers fans who brought up Yelich, and now they're
yeah.
upset they're not getting enough back, but to offload $150 million. Like, I hate to break it to everybody, this is not a cheap endeavor. Mookie Betts was and is a top 10 player in all of baseball, and then packaged with a hefty salary of David Price, an over-the-hill player who's never going to live up to the remaining money on the contract. Gee, that sounds familiar, right? To Christian Yelich. So again, like Adam said, we didn't invent the salary dump trade. We were just floating because there's nothing going on, no signings. So yeah, we're speculating.
Hey,
I don't think it's that crazy.
We really appreciate all of you within the walk-off community. This thing continues to grow and become an animal of its own. It's a little bit overwhelming, but honestly, we love talking Blue Jays baseball and all the interaction that you folks are involved with us. Thank you so much. Discord, feel free to join it. That is always free. The link is in the show notes. You can follow us on Twitter at Walk Off Podcast, on Instagram, the Walk Off Podcast. And if you are watching on YouTube currently and you're not subscribed, we'd really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button. All the best, everybody. Cheers.